Welcome, everybody. My name is Amber Peterson, and I am with Permy and Peterson Associates. And this is our weekly health pop-up. So as part of these conversations, we've talked about a lot of different topics, health related in the bigger scheme of our lives, as well as down to the small things we do every day about what we're going to talk about today. And we've been doing this for over a month now. I believe this is the 6th week, which is insane to think that COVID has pushed us this far, but unfortunately, I think we still have some time to go. So with that though, today we're going to talk about routine. We're going to talk about anchors. We're going to discuss why is this important right now, and how can we use our routine to help keep us grounded. So if you're tuning in virtually, we're going to skip the introductions. If you are watching this video though, and I'll say this at the end again, please send me an email. Let me know how you're doing. Answer some of the questions that I throw into the presentation. I'd love to hear from you. So with that though, anchors, routine, how can we use our daily rhythms to ground ourselves? This is the big question. We're living in a time of uncertainty. We've all got a lot going on, whether we're trying to work from home, we're helping our kids virtually learn as well. Maybe we're fighting anxiety or frustration and not seeing family, or even just the day-to-day, how do I go forward without having my normal things to do? We can use our routine to help ground us. It isn't the only answer. It is a small piece of what we can all do to help ourselves. So if you've been with us these last few weeks, I introduced the tripartite theory of meaning. This is from George and Park that they published back in 2016. I was introduced to this a couple years later from my wonderful professor, Jim Olhoff at St. Mary's University of Minnesota. And what this tripartite theory of meaning says is that meaning in life takes 3 different parts. Love the triangle, the visual here. It takes purpose, which is what I talked about last week. And that's, how are we directed and motivated by our values? What gives us direction? Then we have our mattering, well, the bottom in this case. So then we have our mattering, which is, what's the significance and value I find in things in my life? Or maybe, do I feel significant? Do I feel valued in my life? And then the third thing, comprehension, part of what we're talking about today, the degree to which things in life fit together. Do things make sense in my life? Do I have flow in my life to make things fit together and make sense? So I usually leave the model for the end, but I'm going to throw it in near the beginning this time. And again, if you've been tuning in with us, you know that I'm partial to Human Systems Dynamics Institute and their models. Check out their website. I have the link at the end. Fantastic, lots of resources. Just make sure you cite them. So that's all they ask. And they have a fantastic way of thinking through many different situations. And this is just one of them. This is called finite and infinite games. Now, what is this? What does this mean? We'll talk about the model, and then I'll talk about what that means for when we're talking in routine and our anchors, and what does that all mean together. So finite and infinite games. A finite game is one that we play often and one that we play to win. So an example of a finite game, something that I do on a regular basis. If you're familiar with the Apple Watch, or maybe if you aren't familiar, there's an app on the Apple Watch that is the health app. And it has 3 different rings that close on a daily basis, depending on your activities. There's one for how many hours of the day that you stood at least 1 minute during that hour. There's your exercise ring, getting at least 30 minutes. And then there's your movement, your calories burned from active exercise. And this is something that I fight with myself, or maybe battle myself with every single day, to close my rings. And at the end of the day, once I've done that, I can go, yes, I won. I closed my rings. Excellent. So I fought this fight with myself every day, and I win. Yeah. Or at least I hope I do. So that's a finite game. It's got defined boundaries. It's got defined rules for how I can compete with myself, which it's telling me now, right? Hurry up, get on your rings. It's giving me reminders. And I'm playing to win. It's small, right? a small game. Now, an infinite game is much, much bigger, right? My example here would be living healthy life. I have a very deep value of living healthy, and I plan on living to well over 100 and being able to take care of myself like my great grandparents did, and being able to go and be independent. Now that means that I have to continually play the game of health to keep playing, if that makes sense. I play to keep playing instead of playing to win. So in my infinite game of health, that means I do a lot of different things on a daily basis. I make sure I'm moving. I make sure I'm eating well. I make sure that my brain is healthy. Maybe I'm doing puzzles and I'm talking through my emotions, not letting everything bottle up. It's so many different parts of this in this lifetime of health. Now, you can play finite games within infinite games. Like using my health app helps remind me to keep moving every day. That helps feed into my infinite game of health. Now, a few things to note about this model is that, when we're asking ourselves, am I playing a finite or an infinite game right now? I can ask, are the rules static, meaning like they're defined? I know that the rules are there, they're not changing very frequently. And are there bounded time limits? If that's a yes, then I'm playing more of a finite game. If it's a no, where the rules are changing all of the time, right? In my health example, the rules might be changing constantly because maybe I'm pregnant right now. Maybe I just had a baby. Maybe I'm coming back from an injury, or maybe I just don't feel well. Maybe I had COVID, and which I didn't, but maybe I did, and we're still recovering, and the rules are changing constantly. And the time limits, there's no time limit. It's really wide and open. Now, another question I would ask myself, coming back to am I playing to win or am I playing to keep playing? A finite game doesn't have to be just within a 24-hour cycle. It can be bigger than that, but that's a big key part. Am I playing to win or am I playing to keep playing? Do I want to stay in the game? Not just win and then go into another cycle. And I love this. This quote is from Royce Holiday, also from Human Systems Dynamics Institute. And a lot of these models, she said, there ain't no naughty or nice. And what that means is that there's nothing wrong with playing a finite game. There's nothing wrong with playing an infinite game. And in fact, we need both. We need both to have a full life. So the whole point of it is not to judge it of I'm doing something bad because I'm playing a short-term game. Maybe this is what I have to do right now. Maybe the infinite game is too overwhelming in health right now and I need to focus on my finite game of just moving today. Maybe that's where I'm at, and that's okay. The bad part comes in, the naughty, let's say, part comes in if I am playing a finite game and expecting to get infinite results. By just moving every day, if I'm expecting that that's going to carry me well into 100 years old, sorry, 70-year-old Amber, that's probably not going to look so good, right? But what I can say is that, okay, I realize this is a finite game, and now I have to play it, and then now what do I have to do to make it infinite or make the next step or increase this impact? So that is the model. Let's talk about, what does it mean? What does it mean for us? So we can talk about infinite and finite games in the sense of our whole lives and how healthy we can be, not just physical health. I use that as the example, but healthy in our routines. And I love this quote from Annie Dillard, writer. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Saying that the things that we do on a day-to-day basis do influence our whole lives. So the finite games we play on a daily basis feed into the bigger scheme of our existence. Keeping that in mind, right? So I like to think of this as the routines that I put in place today or follow today. My anchors, I'll explain that in a second, is those routines help define what my bigger life looks like. And if I have these big desired goals or these really deep values, talking about purpose, that's big, that's way out there. I need smaller things to help me get there. That's that routine part. Before we talk about COVID, let's talk about anchors. What does anchors mean? So anchors, I ran across this term when I first got into triathlon. Now, if you're not familiar with triathlon, there's 3 different disciplines you follow: swim, bike, run. And it can be a lot. It's a lot of training, especially if you're serious about it and it's going to be a long event. You can do a small, I would say if you're serious about it, you can train and do a smaller event with minimal training and have fun, right? Just have fun with it. Now, if you're looking to compete, that's a bigger deal. So I was looking at a very long event, a triathlon event, and I was reading up on where the best practices for training, and I came across the term anchors. And what I love about that is it was the author, a well-known triathlon coach, was saying you have to look at, let's just say on a weekly basis, what are the things I do on a weekly basis that determine the time that I have, that really influence my ability to all the other wiggle room I have in my schedule. And those, say, an example would be maybe I sign up for a running club and we run every Tuesday night and Saturday morning. Okay, those are my anchors. Those are things I always do. Now, that might be because I paid for it and I just want to get my money's worth, or it might be that it is really important to me. Maybe it's part of my social structure, my ability to socialize with other people, my ability to train well and stay healthy. It may be bigger than that. Now, those anchors help me form my week. And how I like to think of that is for our routine and our general health is that these anchors are the things that really make things make sense to me. We come back to comprehension. These things help me make sense of my life, these weekly things. Now, an example for me would be I have one of my daily anchors, really this helps me stay grounded, is I get up early before everyone else in my household. I have my coffee or my whatever, but I sit and assess for the day. What do I have in front of me? What's important to pay attention to? And what is the news saying? What do I need to know right now? And that helps me get grounded in my own sense of life before I move on with my day and start taking on all the things my toddler needs, maybe all of the plans my husband might have for us today, everything that I got to jive with for business. So that's one of mine. But anyway, moving forward, routine and COVID. Let's talk about that because that's why we're here, right? Our routines have totally been thrown askew from COVID, right? So we have structure. Now, when we talk about routines, we have structure and routine in our lives, and generally we can have some really great structures that we built for ourselves in routine. And as long as our environment is pretty stable, everything kind of stays stable together. Now, COVID, boom, blew that apart, right? Environment became unstable. So you might ask yourself, well, I'm stuck in this place right now. COVID is still rocking my world. And then I would ask you, how can you find stability in this moment? What can you put into place in this moment to help you zoom in and look at the path ahead of you? Now, you might be already at the next step, which is, okay, COVID threw my schedule all askew. Now I've taken what I've learned and I've helped form it into a new structure for myself. So then the next question becomes, if you're there or once you get there, how has COVID changed what you do, your daily routine, for the better or maybe for the worse? And what do you want to take with you into post-COVID? Or even, what do you want to throw out? What have you done now that's not working for you? These are questions we got to ask ourselves. And the last little concept I want to toss in here is decision fatigue. Now, this is when we get up in the morning. This is linked with willpower. We get up in the morning and we say, okay, I have all these great plans today for myself. I might say, I'm going to exercise later tonight. I'm going to eat healthy all day. I'm going to get into the flow of my work and I'm going to have just a banging day. This is going to be great. And then I have to make little decisions as I go, right? Because now I might have to decide, do I go do this part of work before I do this? Now I have to read emails and I have to decide reading and responding to emails and what that means. And I gotta shift over here because I was gonna work on this project, but this one's calling my attention. And now there's all these decisions, there's all these things going on. And what that does is that erodes my willpower over the day. This is a natural process and it happens to every single one of us. And we have a certain amount of willpower throughout our day. And when our willpower starts to get eroded, boom, we have, for me, I throw the sugar cookies up here because then I don't exercise, I eat unhealthy things, and I sit back and say, well, I just did enough for the day because my willpower is done. I'm tapped out. And how we can use routine to wiggle in there and help this part of what we do is to say, okay, I wake up and I have all these great ideas, and now I make sure that my routine takes into consideration the things that are really important to me, say like exercise, say like eating well, say building time into my day to really pay attention to what I need for work, like getting up early in the morning and tackling my couple tough things, or the things that I really need to get done, I get done right away. Because if I take that decision out of the mix, and just say, this is part of my routine and it's something I do every day, then I don't have to decide about it. I don't have to think about it. I just do it. And what that does is it takes some of these decisions off my plate. My willpower lasts longer. And, oh, okay, maybe I had that sugar cookie at the end of the day. But that impact is smaller on the things that I don't want. So just keep the decision fatigue in mind when we talk about routine, when we talk about willpower. Now from there, I want to circle back really quick and we'll finish up. How do we use this information for ourselves? Besides saying, okay, Amber, I get it. I should build some routine into my life that's going to help me achieve some of the goals that I'm looking at health-wise or otherwise, work-wise. It's going to help me later, but what else? How can I use infinite games and finite games? And I have a few things for us to consider in the finite game. Now, in doing my research on healthy practices, employee wellness, but wellness in general, what the experts say is what can help you, partly with the decision fatigue, partly with the willpower, but helping build that routine in to help us do what we want, right, is the night before. So theoretically, last night, I would stop with myself at the very end of the day and say, what are the 3 most important things I have to do tomorrow? And I might say as well, what are the 3 least desirable things I have to do tomorrow? I would ask myself these 2 questions because first, most important things, maybe my best thinking is in the morning. I need to harness that. Acknowledge it and see it, harness it. Now use my best part of my day to really tackle the things that I need to get done. That might be exercise, that might be I have a really important project to work on, the 3 most important things to me. 3 least desirable. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe you have a project that you're dreading putting together. Again, we have most willpower at the beginning of the day. And if we can get those things off of our plate, we have the whole day ahead of us. And in the infinite game, things to ask ourselves, what are my daily anchors? So I'm thinking really big here. What are my daily anchors, my daily routines that are really important to me? And I would say even weekly. What are the things weekly that are really important to me? Maybe it's an exercise class. Maybe it's sitting and have coffee with your loved one in the morning to check in. How are they doing? Dinner, family dinner at the end of the day. But what do I need to keep in my schedule? Also, if you think about it, what's working for me and what isn't? So if I go back to that first question, that what? Maybe there are things that are in my daily anchors that aren't working for me, that really aren't helping. And so acknowledging what's working and what's not, that's building that meaning into this whole thing, into all of our routine. And then what do I want to do starting right now? What do I want to change? Maybe I want to build something in, maybe I want to tweak something. So if you've been following us as well, you see this is the adaptive action cycle, also from Human Systems Dynamics Institute. What, so what, now what? It's a simple iterative cycle to keep us moving through and doing our own little experiments day to day. So with that, thank you very much. Email me, amber@permypeterson.com. Resources, lots of great stuff from HSD. Again, I pulled out that tripartite theory of meaning. And then Jan Stanley, she had a great TED Talk that I loved. It was short, it was sweet. Type it in on YouTube. It was great talking about routines. So with that, thank you, take care. I'll see you next week for our last pop-up.